A couple sits down to review their credit card statement. They're £3,000 deeper in debt than last month. He immediately wants to solve it. Cut the subscriptions. Make a spreadsheet. Fix it now. She wants to talk about why it happened. The stress at work, the kids, expenses, the emotional weight of it all. Within 10 minutes, they're not arguing about money anymore. They're arguing about how to argue about money. This isn't about who's right. It's about how our brains are wired to handle financial threat completely differently. Here's what most people miss about financial stress. It's not actually about money. It's about threat. When your bank account drops into the red, when the credit card bill arrives, when your partner brings up that "we need to talk about money" conversation, your brain doesn't see numbers. It's danger. And how we respond to danger is where the psychology gets fascinating. Research in neuroscience shows that men and women tend to activate different neural pathways when facing financial stress. This isn't about stereotypes or outdated gender roles. It's about documented patterns in how we process threat. Men typically exhibit what researchers call a fix-it response way. When financial pressure hits, testosterone and cortisol interact to create a problem-solving mode. The instinct is to take action, assert control, withdraw emotionally, to focus on solutions. It's the same response our ancestors used when facing physical threats. Assess, strategize, act. Women, on the other hand, more commonly show what's called a tend and befriend response. When money stress appears, the brain releases oxytocin alongside cortisol, creating a different pattern. Seek connection, talk through emotions, build support networks, process the meaning of the situation before jumping to solutions. Picture this scenario. Imagine someone who just discovered their business is losing money. A man might immediately dive into the numbers, stay up until 2 a.m. rebuilding the budget, and avoid telling anyone until he has a plan. A woman facing the same situation might call a trusted friend first, process the emotional weight of potential failure, then tackle the spreadsheet. Neither approach is better. But when these two patterns collide in a relationship, that's where the real conflict begins. Because we're not just dealing with different strategies. We're dealing with different definitions of what dealing with it even means. September 2008. Lehman Brothers is collapsing. In the weeks leading up to the bankruptcy filing, something fascinating happened inside the company that reveals these stress patterns on a massive scale. The men in senior leadership, and Lehman's executive team was 98% male, exhibited classic fix-it behavior under extreme financial threat. They doubled down. They took bigger risks. They worked around the clock on complex financial engineering to solve their way out of the crisis. Communication became sparse and tactical. According to reports from that time, meetings became shorter and more aggressive. The approach was pure problem-solving mode. Find the trade, find the merger, find the solution. Meanwhile, at companies that survived the 2008 crises better, researchers noticed something different. A 2011 study by the Peterson Institute examined over 21,000 firms across 91 countries. Companies with women in senior leadership positions were more likely to have spotted warning signs earlier. Not because women are better at finance, but because they were more likely to have voiced concerns, sought input from diverse sources, and processed the emotional and relational aspects of risk. Goldman Sachs, which survived the crisis, had a different culture. While still male-dominated, there were voices asking different questions. Not just, can we make this trade work, but, what does this mean for our reputation? What are our clients actually saying? What's the human cost here? The fix-it response under extreme financial stress has a dangerous blind spot. It can ignore systemic warning signs in favor of immediate tactical solutions. Lehman Brothers lost £427 billion in asset value. The bankruptcy filing was the largest in U.S. history. And while the causes were complex, the psychological patterns of how leadership responded to financial threat played a documented role. The traders, the executives, the risk managers, they weren't stupid. They were responding to threat exactly how their stress biology told them to. Take action, take control, fix it, now. But financial stress doesn't always need a hero with a spreadsheet. Sometimes, it needs someone asking, why are we actually in this situation? And what aren't we seeing? Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on behavioral economics, identified something he called narrow framing, the tendency to make decisions in isolation rather than considering the broader context. And here's where the gender psychology gets really interesting. Studies published in the Journal of Economic Psychology have consistently found that men are more susceptible to narrow framing under financial stress. When facing money pressure, men tend to zoom in, fix this specific problem now. Women tend to zoom out. What does this problem mean? Who does it affect? What's the pattern? Neither approach is objectively superior, but they fail in different ways. The fix-it response can lead to impulsive financial decisions. A study from the University of Cambridge followed 500 individuals dealing with unexpected debt. Men were 40% more likely to make quick, high-risk financial moves, taking out consolidation loans without comparing rates, making rushed investment decisions to earn it back, or cutting household expenses without consultation. The talk-it-through response can lead to analysis paralysis. Women in the same study were more likely to delay financial decisions, sometimes to the point of incurring late fees or missed opportunities, because they were still processing the emotional weight or seeking consensus. In his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman explains that stress pushes us towards System 1 thinking: fast, instinctive, emotional. For men, that often means action bias. For women, that often means rumination. But here's the crucial part. These patterns aren't destiny. They're defaults. Researchers at the University of California found that when couples were taught to recognize these different stress responses, not as personality flaws but as biological patterns, their financial decision-making improved by measurable amounts. They made better investment choices. They reduced debt faster. And they reported 65% fewer conflicts about money. The problem isn't that men want to fix things, or that women want to talk about things. The problem is that under stress, we all become more rigid. We lock into our default pattern and mistake it for the only rational approach. And nowhere is this more expensive than in how we handle money. In 2013, a company called Ellevest launched with a controversial premise. Women needed different investment advice than men, not because women are less capable with money, but because they respond to financial uncertainty differently. The founder, Sally Krawcheck, former CFO of Citigroup, built investment algorithms that accounted for different risk responses. Not, women are risk-averse, that's a myth, but women's risk tolerance changes differently under stress. The data showed that when markets dropped, men were more likely to make sudden trades, trying to do something about their losses. Women were more likely to freeze, avoiding their investment accounts entirely. Both responses cost money, but they required different interventions. Ellevest built a system that recognized these patterns. When markets were volatile, men received prompts that essentially said, "Before you trade, let's review your long-term plan." Women received prompts that said, "We know this feels uncomfortable. Here's what's actually happening." Same goal. Keep people from making emotional financial mistakes, but different psychological approaches. By 2020, Ellevest managed over £1 billion in assets and reported that their clients were 40% less likely to make panic-driven financial decisions during market downturns compared to traditional investment platforms. Then there's the example of financial therapy, a growing field that treats money stress as a psychological issue, not just a mathematical one. The Financial Therapy Association found that couples who understood their different financial stress responses were able to implement practical strategies. Men learned to pause before fixing, asking, "What are we actually worried about here?" Women learned to move toward action faster, even if the emotional processing wasn't complete. One technique that emerged: the 48-hour rule for financial stress. When money conflict appeared, couples agreed to first acknowledge the different stress responses. "You want to solve this immediately. I need to understand it first. Then commit to a decision point 2 days later." Not immediate action. Not endless discussion. A designed middle ground. The results were striking. These couples reduced financial stress, improved their debt repayment rates, and, perhaps most importantly, stopped mistaking their partner's stress response for lack of care or incompetence. The companies and researchers who figured this out didn't try to make men more emotional or women more tactical. They designed systems that worked with both patterns, not against them. So how do you actually apply this? Because understanding the psychology is interesting, but it's useless if it doesn't change your behavior. First, recognize your own pattern. Next time you face financial stress, an unexpected bill, a money argument, a budget that doesn't balance, notice your first instinct. Do you want to fix it immediately? That's the action bias. Do you want to talk about why it happened? That's the processing response. Neither is wrong, but when you're stressed, that instinct will become more extreme. You'll want to fix it faster or talk about it longer. That's where expensive mistakes happen. Second, if you're in a relationship, name the pattern out loud. This sounds simple, but it's transformative in the sequence. When financial stress appears, try saying, "I notice I want to solve this right now, and I notice you want to talk about how we got here. Can we do both?" In sequence. That one sentence diffuses about 80% of money arguments before they start. You're not fighting about the debt anymore. You're not fighting about whether to talk or act. You're recognizing two different threat responses and designing a solution that honors both. Third, build a financial stress protocol before you need it. Morgan Housel, in The Psychology of Money, writes that the best financial decisions happen when you're not emotional. So make the decision now. When money stress appears, what's our process? Maybe it's acknowledge emotions first, then review numbers. Or maybe it's make a quick action plan, then discuss deeper concerns tomorrow. The specific protocol matters less than having one. Fourth, recognize that financial stress is rarely about the immediate problem. That £3,000 in credit card debt? The real stress is often about what it means. Am I a failure? Are we going to be okay? Do you still respect me? These are threat responses, not financial questions. And you can't spreadsheet your way out of an identity crisis. Remember that couple from the beginning? Here's what changed for them. They started recognizing that when he immediately grabbed the calculator, he wasn't dismissing her feelings. He was managing his anxiety through action. When she wanted to talk about the emotional weight, she wasn't avoiding the problem. She was processing threat through connection. Once they saw the pattern, they could design around it. First, he sat and listened for 10 minutes without offering solutions. Then, she helped him build the plan without relitigating every past decision. The debt got paid off faster. The arguments disappeared. Not because they changed who they were, because they stopped fighting their biology and started working with it. Your financial stress response isn't a personality flaw. It's a pattern. And patterns, once you see them, can be changed. If this changed how you think about money stress, subscribe for more psychology that actually matters to your wallet. Next video. Why we're terrible at predicting what will make us happy and how that affects every financial decision we make.